Hi, welcome back down the art trail with Joanne. I'm here today with Sherry Czekus in her studio in Kitchener at the Globe Studios. So Sherry, great to be here and thank you for agreeing to do this with me today.
Thank you for coming in.
You're quite welcome. This is a great place to hang out, Sherry, and so I suspect that not everybody in Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge knows about this studio. Can you tell us a little bit about it and how many artists are here?
Yes, Globe Studios is located downtown Kitchener. Just kind of a rough estimate, I think we've got about 30 artists here in the building. Globe Studios is just going through a bit of a change right now in that Globe has purchased the other half of the large, it's the Bonnie Stewart Shoe Factory that we're actually in.
Ah, right.
I don't know if you remember that from
I do.
Years ago.
I do.
Coming here and buying the little baby booties.
I do.
We've still got some of the actual machines that made some of the shoes.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, they're just kind of sitting around in the hallway. So Globe has expanded. I think we've more than doubled our square footage here now. So hopefully welcoming new artists into the space.
Mm-hmm. And there are semi-annual shows here outside of COVID times. Mm-hmm. This is a wonderful place for people to drop in on a weekend and sort of peruse all of the open doors that are here. You have a great studio space, Sherry.
Thank you. I think so too.
Yeah, the light here is fantastic in your studio.
Really is. Yeah.
And do you paint every day by any chance, or what's your schedule like in terms of painting?
So I do paint every day. I have a part-time job only because painting in a studio is not the most social. Even though we're here at Globe with a lot of other artists working here, still it's really solitary work. So I do have a couple of things that I like to do one day a week. Good. Outside of the studio. It kind of keeps the painting fresh. And I'm afraid that if I kind of just stayed in my studio painting every single day without, that kind of community engagement, I'm afraid I wouldn't be painting for very long. Yeah. So I've got a really nice balance kind of worked out.
Awesome. And you're really busy because you in fact wear many hats. You're not just an artist, you are in the healthcare sector and you're also teaching as well. So really busy gal. And you hold an MFA from Western University, and you raised your family and then decided you were going to do your MFA?
I did. I always had a plan to do it once my girls were more independent, and so when they were, it was time to, kind of buckle down. I always knew I wanted to make art. And I made some art, but I really felt like I needed that kind of formal education and, a little bit better understanding of art history and kind of where art came from before I could, have a perspective on making my own work.
You indicated that there were only 6 students in your class, so pretty small, tight group.
Yeah.
Were you the oldest in the group?
So the way it goes, you have a cohort. You have the first year cohorts and the second year cohorts. And so maybe when I started in the first year cohort, I think I might have been the oldest one in the group, but I wasn't the oldest one of the first and second year cohort.
It's kind of cool to be the oldest one in the group, actually.
Well, I was trying to hide it for a little while and word got out.
You also indicated that you've always wanted to do art. And of course, you in particular, you're from the Chatham area.
Yes.
And you have kind of a long family tradition of art in your family. So can you share with us who were the Mavens in your family?
Well, I believe it started with my maternal great-grandmother. She was a painter, and she painted from, I think, the time she could hold a paintbrush. And she made a living selling her paintings, on her own in the small town. And I never knew her, but I always thought that was kind of a cool thing that she did. I don't think it was a really common thing. Back in the 1920s, 1930s when she would have been doing that, 1940s, 50s maybe too. She painted her whole life and, you know, made that her life's work. And so my whole family has kind of dabbled in art in some way. I think we all kind of got the art gene. And, you know, if you talk to my mom and my mom's family, you know, we got the art gene from my mom's side. But if you talk to my dad's side, we got the art gene from them.
Wow,
So.
wow, so double whammy. What kind of work was your great grandmother doing? Was she doing traditional things?
She was a traditional landscape painter, and she
Okay.
painted in oils all the time. They had like a little bit more of a realistic kind of group of seven sort of landscape. They kind of reminded me of those paintings from Algoma. Like if you think about, you know, some of those from that area. She painted a lot of landscape scenes that looked quite northern, with a lot of pine trees and water and kind of little rocky islands.
Which was, of course, very indicative of what was going on with Canadian painters, certainly in the
Yes.
20s and 30s and 40s.
Exactly.
So, yeah, usually artists will tell me that they've always wanted to draw or paint or whatever, and they have been the kinds of kids that when they're in kindergarten class, the teacher kind of knows that, you know, you've got a little bit of extra special something right off the bat. True?
I don't know that I was ever recognized for that in school, actually. I don't really feel like I was. I feel like I had maybe more of a will to do it rather than what people call a natural talent. I don't really see that. I feel like it was a lot of hard work and kind of figuring out problems in art, figuring out drawing problems, figuring out painting problems, and kind of sorting through representation versus abstraction. But, you know, early on, was I a prodigy? Absolutely not.
We're going to be back in a minute, Sherry, and we're going to talk about your style and what makes your style so unique. So I'm back with Sherry Czekus in her Globe Studios in Kitchener. Sherry, you have an extremely distinctive style, I would say. And of course, the obvious question I'm sure that you get asked over and over again is why your figures appear to be relatively faceless.
Yes, I actually have that question asked quite a bit. And the whole idea about them not having a face, actually I see them as having faces. I'm just not kind of painting in the forms of their faces and, you know, exactly what they look like, because I'm not really interested in the identity of the individuals that are in the crowds. I'm kind of looking for an identity in the crowd at large. And so I think that's why, you know, I'm kind of hiding some of the features so that the viewer isn't really focusing on, oh, I think I might know that person, or, you know, some kind of recognition. I'm looking for kind of a gesture from all of the figures, kind of collectively.
So how are the figures interrelating with each other, or are they?
Well, you know, that's just the thing about these crowd scenes is we're so close together in the crowd, and when I start off by photographing the crowd, so these paintings are starting with my own photographs, and so sometimes I'm part of that crowd, and sometimes I'm not part of the crowd. So you can see, like, almost like the crowd confronts the viewer, and sometimes you feel like you're part of it and you're kind of walking along behind them. And it's kind of difficult to say.
To put into words.
Yeah.
It's obviously you're an incredible observer. Would you say?
Well, that's an interesting comment, because when I'm taking the photographs for the paintings, I'm actually hold my camera at my waist and I'm just shooting. So I'm not actually looking through a lens when I'm taking the photographs.
Right.
I take lots of them. So it's when I can come back and kind of, distill those images on my laptop that I'm able to kind of, pick out these little moments that I think are worth painting.
So what kind of a story would be going on here, Sherry? What's happening here?
Well, these people are on the other side of the street that I'm on, and we're kind of stopped at a light, and it's almost kind of, we're going to cross paths. They're going to come towards, and we're going to go towards them, and then we're just going to kind of intermingle in between. And it's kind of that moment right before that happens when you've got the two sides of the street. So I suspect these people don't know each other, and so this series is called Series of Disengagements. So I feel like these people look like they're physically engaged, but they're not necessarily engaging with each other.
And is this new work, Sherry?
It is new work. Yes, it is new work. I've created a series of 3 paintings that will be held at Wilfrid Laurier University in the LIFT series, which has been delayed because of the COVID situation. And it'll be hung in the Wilfrid Laurier Library on one of the floors there.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. I'm not going to let you off the hook just yet. Because, of course, I think it's like wearing a mask. It is more difficult to have an engagement, and I know that you don't want us to have an engagement with the viewer. In fact, what I think you're telling us is that you want us to have an engagement with the group per se, right?
Right. Right. And I think the group kind of tells us something about ourselves because we're getting those social cues, whether we think we're engaging with the people that surround us socially in public places or not. Well, I think we're picking up those cues from each other. Like how close can you stand to the person beside you, and can you touch the person beside you? I think it's all changed because of COVID.
Well, sure.
But, pre-COVID,
right,
before the COVID lens kind of, took over everything, those are the kinds of things that we kind of learn from each other when we're just standing on a street corner. It looks like a very mundane kind of thing to do, but
except it's not.
It's not.
What do you think your buyers of your work are attracted to?
Oh, well, what I hear from people, I don't get to contact or have any kind of contact with buyers who buy the work because the work is mostly sold through art galleries. But I think what they really appreciate is the color in them, and the color is kind of a puzzle for me when I'm making the paintings. The balance is kind of like this, I don't know, almost like a Sudoku, where every time you do it it's a little bit different, but it's kind of, all the same numbers. But sometimes it's hard to get there, and sometimes I feel like I can paint myself into a corner where the next move isn't obvious. I've got to change a few things before I can make another move. So I kind of enjoy that about it, and I think people probably are initially attracted to like the forms and all the different colors in them.
The colors, for sure. When you say jigsaw, I mean, I can sort of in my head identify that aspect of it. But of course, you know exactly what you're doing.
Well, sometimes I feel like I don't know. They become very abstract when I'm painting them. So if I'm painting an arm, let's say, I don't necessarily see that as painting an arm. I look at it as, kind of a vertical, like long, oblong kind of shape, and, it's beside another one. And I see some repetition, and so then I can kind of work out kind of a color composition that way too, to, kind of highlight that repetition of those same shapes. So those are the kinds of things, or, where can you stop the eye and where can you continue the eye going, just with the types of colors that you're using on certain types of forms. So, once I've kind of have an idea of what I'm going to paint, I kind of lose that idea, and it's really about the abstraction of the whole scene.
You're painting in oil and not acrylic.
It's oil.
Why?
I like the flexibility that you have with oil. You can have it dry really quickly, or you can keep it wet for a long time, and it's just a really nice material to work with. It's, it's kind of buttery.
This doesn't look like oil.
I know, it's really thinned down. I do thin them down quite a bit because I like the fluidity of it, and I know it's not a common way to paint with oil paint, but I like to show a little bit of that canvas in behind so that you kind of don't ever really lose sight of it being a painting.
It's beautiful, and I can see why so many people are attracted to your work, Sherry. Do you always paint on large canvases? This particular idea of community, do you paint on smaller canvases? And if you do, what effect does it have on the canvas?
Generally, I paint on larger canvases. I like to have the figures as close to life size as possible because I like the viewer to have the feeling that they can actually be part of that crowd and kind of, have that experience. If I'm painting on a smaller canvas, it's more of an intimate kind of experience. Generally, this year I did more of a series kind of through a COVID lens, and how can we connect with one another in times of COVID. So there were a lot of park scenes with people sitting down in pairs, and there weren't 30 people at a crosswalk kind of thing. And so they were like more intimate paintings, but they were smaller, like 12 by 12 or 8 by 8, even really small paintings that you wanted to get up close to and kind of look at. But these ones, you kind of want to stand back a little bit, right? Because these people are kind of in your space.
We're going to be right back, Sherry, and we have more to talk about. Thanks. Okay, Sherry, we were talking about you painting on smaller canvases, and I think this is a great example of what you're referring to. So explain what you're trying to achieve with this canvas versus a large canvas.
Sure. This canvas is a 24 by 24 inch. And the section of it, if you look at it from a representational point of view, it's actually two figures standing side by side. And so what I'm trying to do here is not so much shrink the whole figure onto one canvas, but I'm trying to take like a little section of the figure that would fit, basically within that space.
Right.
And so that's what I've done there. So that was a tricky one because I started off with like a very light colored blouse on the right hand side and then some stripes on the bottom, and you think compositionally, how do you balance that out? And so I put a really strong red with some orange and looks like a nice little shadow beside it and some dark blue, just so that you're kind of looking between the two areas of color on the canvas. And and just kind of balancing out the size of the forms and what color the forms are going to become. Those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about when I'm making these paintings.
The smaller paintings.
Yeah.
Wow. I like them both because I'm getting a different feeling off of both of them, of course. I have to ask you this because we talked about this before. Your signature on your work.
Yeah, I don't sign the front of the paintings. I just feel like my signature would be such a distraction to the image. And I've never signed the front of my work. I've done it on occasion when I feel like it's been requested, and it has been requested. And I try to put my signature in a spot where it's not standing out like an object in the painting. That's the one thing that concerns me, is that my signature becomes part of the painting, and with the paintings just being figures, it's really hard to put my signature in there. That's text. To me, just compositionally, it doesn't make sense. So I always sign them on the back. They're all signed. You just can't see it. Yeah.
Well, I had to ask because I don't see your big, bold, beautiful signature there.
No, not on these.
So motivation, it's a good question that every artist, I'm sure,
Yeah.
goes through.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay motivated on a regular basis?
Well, I don't find it difficult to stay motivated. There's always something to paint. I feel like these crowds and figure painting, it's a really rich subject matter, and you can either back up from it and be really representational, or you can get really close and be really abstract. It never gets old.
Good for you, Sherry. That's wonderful. You're a true artist when you can actually say that. You have incredible success in the U.S. Of course, you have success locally. You're represented by Paula White Diamond. You have galleries in Montreal and Ottawa and elsewhere. And you do have strong representation in the United States. Is there a difference between art buyers for your particular genre in the U.S. versus Canada? No, I haven't seen a difference that way. I don't know that there's a lot of people. There's some people making this kind of work, but in terms of painting crowd culture. But no, I don't really see a difference between the Canadian market per se and the U.S. market. The U.S. market is larger.
It's much larger.
And there are more people in the United States. So congratulations for finding a niche market in the U.S. I'm sure that feels good to know that your work is getting outside of Canada so successfully,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why do people need art in their life anyway, Sherry?
Oh, gee, for so many reasons. Like if you think about, being anywhere with, nothing creative around you, what could we imagine? I think when the artist is making art, it's about imagination, and I think when people are looking at art, it has a lot to do with kind of, working with their own imagination, because I feel like the viewer and the artist never have the same viewpoint on, a piece of artwork. It's a very personal thing, but I think when you have artwork around that people respond to, I think that's great.
And for a first-time art buyer that buys a piece from you, how does that feel?
Oh, every time somebody buys a piece from me, it's surprising because, when it's your own work, you think, well, maybe that's it, but it isn't, and people buy the work, and it's really humbling to think that, I'm spending a few days with this work, making it, and, prepping it, and maybe shipping it, and that kind of thing, but someone's purchased it, and they're going to live with it.
They are.
I don't live with this work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're going to live with that piece, and they're going to put it in a prominent place, whether it's like in an office building, or their office, or their home, or their dining room, or their kids are excited about it. Like, that's pretty amazing.
Good feeling, huh?
It is. I think for any artist, like, we have to be humbled by that experience every time.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about being the artist is that you're kind of putting yourself out there into the world to say, here I am, this is what's in my head, this is what's important to me. And so when you have somebody that buys it, you know that it's important to them too.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
What's next, Sherry?
Well, it's been kind of a challenging time to come up with source material, because I take my own images, like in large cities and when I'm traveling, and these images are from crowds of people from Sydney, Australia, And so we've been grounded since the spring, and you can't go anywhere, and you don't have these kinds of crowds. So I have to kind of look back into those images. And one thing that I was really interested in when I was in grad school was looking at how to isolate a section of time on a canvas. And I found that to be a really interesting kind of project. So I'm going back to, I'm using these photos, and because they're taken in succession, and sometimes they're taken from video. So I'm going back to that idea that I was working on in grad school, where I'm isolating 1 second of time on a canvas. And how do you paint movement? You know, there's a lot of, you know, little tricks and things that you can do, but I think I'm looking to do something new, maybe something we haven't seen before. I don't know if I'll get to that, but it's really fun kind of, you know, trying out like paint and, you know, different thicknesses and colors and kind of layering and that sort of thing.
We are living in a moment in time, aren't we?
We sure are.
Thank you very much, Sherry, for spending some time with me this afternoon. I really enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed getting to know you better, and I know that the viewers are going to enjoy hearing every word of what you have to say, Sherry. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Joanna. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.